Good morning, everybody. I'm really grateful to be here today. Good morning. My name is Julie Kurtz. Where am I supposed to stand to be on the camera on Zoom? Is there a limit? Okay. Don't move. I'm a mover, so this is going to be really hard. We're here till 12 today. My name is Julie Kurtz. I'm the founder for the Center for Optimal Brain Integration. I train all over the country on trauma and social emotional skills. And I have co-authored 5 books on early childhood trauma. And right now, with several co-authors, we're in the middle of writing a book for TK through 12th grade educators through Harvard Press on reducing stress in schools. So all about trauma and toxic stress. But here, I'm going to talk about something so important. Trauma through the lens of children, and how young children under the age of 7 and 8 express their trauma and their stress through play, and what you do when you're not a therapist. So we're going to talk about that today. We're going to have points in between each vignette where we'll ask questions, and we'll see if any of you have questions on Zoom or in the training, or wonderings or examples that you want to share. You'll have to use the mic to do that so everyone on Zoom can hear you. So let's start with thinking about how we can support young kids through play. Whether you're a therapist, a counselor, or you are an early childhood provider, let's think about how this happens. Does anybody know in the United States how many kids under the age of 6 have experienced trauma? The percentage. Anybody want to guess? Say it again. So one person on the Zoom, folks, guessed 30%. Anyone else want to guess? 60%? Half of our kids in the country before the pandemic under the age of 6 have experienced trauma. And that's just like reported data. We know after the pandemic, it's probably higher. 70% of humans by the time they reach the age of 18 experience trauma. This is a huge issue, more prevalent than we all even imagined. And after the pandemic, it became even worse. And this is just based on 10 questions that were asked in an adverse childhood experiences study. Didn't even ask all the types of traumas that you can experience. So this is such important healing work that we're doing. Trauma can leave a child with an inner narrative, I feel out of control. See, trauma leaves you feeling out of control because you can't do anything in the middle of the trauma. You can't fight, you can't run away, you can't freeze. Well, you can freeze, but you can't fight, you can't run away. So it leaves you with a narrative, I feel out of control, a narrative, I don't trust people and I don't trust places, and it rewires your brain and body to be on high alert all the time. I know firsthand from the history of my trauma growing up, which is why this is so important and passionate to me. But see, for young kids who are born on the planet, they don't have the words under the age of 6 to be able to say, excuse me, I'm feeling really big feelings right now, or I'm feeling triggered and I don't feel safe, and I need this. So what do? They show it through their behavior. That's what we do too as adults. With our behavior, we show that we have big feelings instead of with our words. So kids, through play, can actually access the agency, the control, the avenue to express their big feelings in a healthy way. Play also buffers toxic stress. You know, we are moving so much in this country to eliminating play and having more structured time for kids under the age of 6, but it's actually play where kids learn best, but it's also play that gives me an opportunity to have a sense of control and to express what I might be going through. And that can buffer my stress. So when children act out things on the playground with guns, or they're being superheroes, they're telling a story. They're trying to gain power, or they're telling a story of what's going on in their community, or they're trying to control a situation. They're trying to protect themselves from danger. Through play, children tell stories about their inner world, their outside world, everything that's going on in their lives. See, Dr. Bessel van der Kolk says, who wrote the book, The Body Keeps the Score, we're on the verge of becoming a trauma-conscious society. Trauma is now our most urgent public health issue. We all need to, at every age, any human that's working with a student or a child needs to learn trauma responsive strategies, which is why I do this work. Because when we punish, when we blame, when we shame, when we criticize, we are not going to help the nervous systems of children feel safe. Here's what happens inside of the brain. In between your mouth and the base of your neck is the red part of your brain on this slide. The red part of your brain is called the hind survival brain. Pause for just a moment and thank this part of your brain. Why? Because it's designed to keep you alive on the planet as long as possible. It literally gives you the sensations of hunger, so you eat, so you live longer. It makes you yawn, so you sleep, so you live longer. And when you're driving on the freeway and someone cuts you off, it immediately dilates your pupils, increases your blood pressure, increases your heart rate, increases your body temperature, and mobilizes sensations to your hands to swerve out of the way to save your life. It's a miracle. Now, that part of your brain is also responsible for 3 F words. Can anyone just yell out one F word? Not a bad F word, although you say that when you're in this part of the brain. What's one of the F words we do when we're in danger? Fight, flight, freeze. There's more, fawning and fainting. But for the purposes of today, we're going to remember that when we are in terror, real or perceived terror, we go into fight, flight, or freeze. Now, it's great if there was an earthquake right now. You need the hind survival brain to get you under that table fast. But it's not okay if your husband doesn't meet you at 5 o'clock for dinner when he said he would, and you're now irritated, and you're going to move into fight mode, right? Which is what our kids do when they've experienced traumatic stress or toxic stress. The body rewires to live in this part of the brain. But the mid part of the brain, the blue section, is the limbic brain. That part of the brain develops around 2 years old. You're born with the hind brain. Then if you have nurturing, responsive caregivers, safe, predictable environments, guess what part of your brain wakes up at around 2? The limbic brain. What do we call 2-year-olds? Somebody knows. Terrible twos. Did you say terrorist twos? Terrible twos. That's because when the blue part of the brain wakes up, if you had safety, guess what happens? It's responsible for 2 things, feelings and emotions. And guess what happens when you reach the age of 2? Somebody pushes your emotional button. You don't have years and years of experience of dealing with that. Anger for the first time when someone takes your shovel while you're playing with it. I'm going to go punch you in the face, right? Because I have a big feeling and I don't know what to do with it yet. So we spend years teaching kids how to identify feelings, emotional literacy, how to calm big feelings, and how to solve our problems for the greater good. So the limbic midbrain is responsible for feelings. And the second thing it's responsible for, which is going to tie into all these vignettes I'm going to give you around play, the second thing it's responsible for is our neurobiological wiring for connection. Every one of your brains has a deep desire to be seen and to be loved and to be heard and to be valued and to belong. And we're going to go back to that when children are experiencing traumatic stress. Ready to walk up the stairs to the green part of the brain? Your green part of the brain takes 25 years to develop. It is your prefrontal cortex. It's responsible for higher level functioning that only humans have. The ability to think, reason, problem solve, sustain your focal attention, have self-regulation and empathy. Even solving problems for the greater good. So what happens to us every single day that will happen to you and me today probably is something will trigger your emotional buttons in your limbic brain. Guess what happens when that happens? Up, the alarm goes off. The orange button in your brain, the amygdala. When the amygdala goes off, it has one job only, and that's to send smoke signals 1,000 miles an hour to your hind survival brain. Wake up, we need you. And guess what else it does? It shuts down access to your higher level thinking, functioning 90% of the time under stress. You can't think, you can't reason, you can't problem solve for the greater good. You can't have empathy for your partner, your spouse, a child when you're triggered emotionally. And then guess what takes over? The hind survival brain takes over and tells you to FFF, fight, flight, freeze. So one of the things I want to really emphasize about trauma, it's different than an emotional button being pushed. Children with challenging behaviors is because they haven't learned the skill, and social emotional trainings come in and teach that skill. But if you live in a body that's experienced trauma, you're living here all day, every day, and you haven't developed these parts of your brain yet. And your nervous system is wired now to be on high alert all the time. With an inner narrative, the world is dangerous and people are dangerous. So we have to think about when kids experience challenging behaviors, it's not that we have to teach them a skill, it's that we have to help their nervous system feel safe. That's how the healing of trauma happens. So most of us walk around in the world when we're working with students and they have a dysregulated behavior. We all often have this voice. What's wrong with you? See, because when a child has a dysregulated behavior, it pushes our emotional button. When it pushes our emotional button, it shuts down the access to our higher functioning and makes us react fast with a what's wrong with you. And the trajectory of our reactions back to the students are blaming, shaming, criticizing, punishing, expelling, exclusionary discipline practices. And in preschool, 250 kids are expelled every day, and that's higher than any other grade. So we have to move our voice through self-awareness, understanding trauma, being aware of our own emotional buttons, from what's wrong with you, we call it the trauma-inducing voice, to the second voice that Oprah Winfrey and Dr. Bruce Perry wrote a book about called What Happened to You. We call this voice the trauma-informed voice because it allows a little more empathy. Something must have happened to you to cause that behavior. But today, through play, we're going to learn how to wake up that third voice, which means you got to go to the trauma gym for this one. Nobody wants to go to the trauma gym. Nobody wants to go to the real gym, right? Like the trauma gym means I've got to work out to build this empathic muscle that's trauma responsive and healing engaged. What is your behavior communicating to me that you need? And that is really hard to do in the middle of a child who's spitting in your face or telling you to F off or whatever. When they're doing that, your amygdala goes off and you will react with this what's wrong with you voice. So let's hold this in our mind, even this visual of the goldfish and the shark fin. When you go home today, if you have a partner or spouse, or you have a parent, or you have a loved one, or you have a student you work with, and you see that shark fin pop out, we call it the dysregulated behavior, right? When you see it pop out, know how fast your amygdala reacts to just see the shark fin and to stop at the voice, what's wrong with you? But can you, through self-awareness, recognize you're triggered, move looking past the shark fin to the goldfish underneath, and wonder, what is this child's behavior communicating? What is my partner's behavior communicating? It's no different than when years ago, my kids are adults now, but when my kids were growing up, maybe they were 7 and 8, my husband and I were both working, we were busy. I'll never forget one Sunday morning, I was making breakfast and I delivered my kids their fluffy pancakes and I purposely charred and burnt my husband's and delivered it to him. Now, this didn't end there because when he went into the shower in our house, when you flush the toilet, the shower goes cold. So I purposely flushed the toilet while he was in the shower. I know you're like, that's all. If everyone leaves right now, I'll know that I said something to offend you. All of you can see yourself in my story. What was the meaning of my behavior? Was it to gain someone or something, to avoid someone or something, to express an emotion, or because I had a trauma trigger? Now, what you don't know, the meaning of my behavior is that we were not spending a lot of time together, my husband and I was getting irritated. And one of the things I've learned at the age of 56, what I look like when I get irritated when we're not connecting, because the limbic brain has a high need for connection. When you're not getting it from your loved ones, you will resort to acting out to get it. What a silly way to get attention, burning pancakes and flushing the toilet. That's going to drive him away even more. But see, over the years, I've developed self-awareness so I can recognize it instantly and I can communicate with words what I need. Children don't have the voice yet to do that. And trauma-impacted children don't have the voice to do that. So we have to begin to guess, what's the story that your behavior is communicating? Always with trauma, since this is about trauma, it's always communicating, I feel unsafe. Now, do you need to know the trauma history to help a child? No, you just need to see a child in distress and know that every trauma responsive strategy that we use is aligned with all social emotional curriculum. It's just the intent of trauma responsive strategies is to help the nervous system to rewire to be calmer more so that I can access my cortex so that I can think and learn social emotional skills. Last thing, and by the way, we're going to have certain points where I'll see if you have any questions. So write your questions down. And then at these points, at these junctures on Zoom, or if you have questions, we'll pause for those. A friendly reminder that under the age of 6, children are building 1 million new neural connections a second. We can no longer say it's the family's fault. If the family just changed, I can help this child. Because if you're with a child even 5 minutes in a day, they're building 1 million new neural connections every second. You have a lot of power in 5 minutes to help a nervous system feel safe. And with repetition over time, feeling safe with just one human in one environment, my body can rewire. I think about my trauma growing up, and I think about all the influences that help my nervous system not have as many adverse outcomes. So let's go into play. Children tell their story through play. They use toys to say what they cannot say, to do things they would feel uncomfortable doing or expressing, and or that they would otherwise get reprimanded. Play is a powerful tool. It's a symbolic language that expresses the story inside, what the child experienced, what their feelings are, what they wish, they want, and they need. And we're going to learn that through several of the vignettes that we're going to start now. And after vignette number 1, we'll pause for questions, stories, or comments. The first story is very simple. It's telling a story through play about the global pandemic. Now, during the pandemic, this was a center that was open during the pandemic. And one of the things that they noticed, well, they closed their center for about 2 months early, but then they opened it back up and everything looked different, as you know. People were taking temperatures. They had to take their shoes off before they came in. They had to have sanitize their hands and the toys every second. They were separating kids, and all these things were happening. And people were wearing masks. And that is a lot for a child under the age of even 8 to experience. Seeing all of this. So let me tell you what happened in this school before I tell you what teacher Kim did. In this school and in this classroom, kids started to take popsicle sticks and they started to walk around taking each other's temperature. And they were like 98, 105. And so they started acting out all of these things. I'm starting with a very, very, very simple story, and we'll move to more complex. The power of what happened in this classroom in the presence of their teachers. Let's look at all the things the teacher did. First, teacher Kim recognized that play is the canvas to act out our feelings and our experiences. It's similar for adults when they talk to a trusted friend. How many of you have ever called up a friend and be like, let me tell you, I am so annoyed right now. That's what kids do through play because they don't have the words. When children feel safe with you and in the environment, they then find a safe pathway to non-verbally express their feelings associated with a scary experience. So this preschool recognized that when children felt a loss of control from these stressful or traumatic events from the pandemic, play was the antidote to give them a sense of agency, power, and control, the opposite of trauma, using their imagination to conquer real problems to buffer their stress. Very powerful story, very simple. And by the way, all these stories come from our book. I have one copy here, but Supporting Young Children to Cope and Build Resilience and Heal from Trauma Through Play. 100% of the proceeds of every one of our books are donated. So I'm not promoting them for any other reason. Then they go to a nonprofit who works with children in marginalized communities. So at the end, we are going to have a raffle, though. So we will have a raffle. So telling a story through play about divorce. This is vignette number 2. But before we move to vignette number 2, let me take a breath, pause, see if there are any ahas, questions, or even a story that you want to tell. We would have to bring you a microphone. And if something comes up in the chat box, let me know too. That's what we'll do after every vignette. So prepare your thoughts and questions. If there are no questions, great. It gives me a chance to take a sip of water. Okay. Story number 2, telling a story through play about divorce. Okay, Calvin was in the dramatic play area playing with 2 dolls, and he would say to himself, "This is mom and this is dad." And then he created 2 separate houses for the dolls to live in. He brought a little baby in his play and he would fly the baby around like it was a bird. This is how his play started. So Calvin's 5 years old, and he's this young child who's trying to organize and process his feelings about his parents' divorce with his teacher, Lisa. So what happened was he's flying it around, and what the teacher did was sit close to him and just listen. You know how you call your friend on the phone, and when your friend is like, "Oh, girl, I'm telling you, let me tell you, I've been through the same thing. Let me tell you my story." While you're in the middle of your heated emotional story, they start to talk about themselves. That's not attuned listening. Attuned listening is when you're in the presence of another human being who's really listening to how you feel. Dr. Daniel Siegel says it's called name it to tame it. The research shows we can tame big feelings when we are heard. So when she sat next to him playing, witnessing the play, that's the first gift you can give a child, is just to sit and witness. Because the story they're telling through the play is telling a story of what they're feeling. The second thing the teacher did was just start to wonder, where's the baby going when it flies away? Now, a teacher has to pay attention to the nervous system of a child. When you proceed to ask a question, you have to see, does the child's eyes start darting? Do they start shaking? Do their shoulders scrunch up and do they start shutting down? That means you've moved a little too far and their nervous system can't tolerate the question. But in this case, this child would say, the baby's flying away to visit the magical princess. These are all true stories. The baby's flying away to visit the magical princess. And the teacher wants, where's the baby going? What's the princess saying to the baby? What are they doing with the princess? We have to be careful how much we push the nervous system while we dance between listening and wondering, observing the physical sensations in their body to see, are we moving too far, too fast? But he seemed okay with it. Visiting the magical princess, it's a secret, he said. Shh. And then the teacher was like, oh, it's a secret. Wow. Do you want to tell me the secret? And then he started to shut down. You could see it in the sensations. He was just turned away and wouldn't talk to the teacher. That's okay. That's a sign my nervous system is not ready to tell you the secret. I can't tolerate it yet. So the teacher says, it's okay. You don't have to tell me unless you're ready. But I'll sit here and still be present with you. She might not even say those things. She'll just sit. See, because we are navigators of the nervous system of every human we come in contact with. We have to learn how to read the cues. Are we too much or too little? Then he turned around. He said, okay, do you want to know the secret? This may have been like after 5 minutes. Yeah. The magical princess brings mommies and daddies back together. Now, as a teacher, I might want to say, you know, that can't happen. Your parents are never getting back together. Let me tell you right now. I don't want this child to be misled thinking that he has a fantasy that they're going to bring back together. He'll get more hurt. See how we have this thought process coming from a good place of wanting to fix, or we grew up in a family where feelings were not tolerated. Hello, that's most of us. Most of us were raised by families and cultures where they cast the spotlight of our attention outward day in and day out. Give me, you want to keep crying? I'll give you something to cry about. Right? Let me give you the belt. We never got in touch with our feelings. So this is difficult for us to tolerate other people's feelings. Eventually, over time, he was able to say to her, they bring mommies and daddies back together. But see, he said to the teacher, don't tell my mom and dad. That's really hard when someone says, I have a secret and don't tell my mom and dad. But this isn't like a secret that's like, don't tell my mom and dad. And he goes, and the teacher says, oh, you don't want your mom and dad to know. No, because I know it can't happen. But see, what's happening is during play, Calvin had an opportunity to replace his feelings of grief from the loss, sadness from having to move from home to home, with a feeling of power, agency, and control. I can make the baby go visit the princess, and the princess can make great things happen and can bring mommies and daddies back together. And that gives me a sense of control when I act that out in my play. There's the name it to tame it. Also, this word attunement. Remember I talked about the blue limbic brain? One of the things the limbic brain is responsible for is the need to be seen, loved, and valued. And when that child is communicating through play, what's happening inside of him, his grief, his loss, his sadness, his hopes, trying to gain control, and the teacher's listening without correcting, directing, shaming, fixing, telling him it's not true. Don't play that way. That can't happen. That attunement provided Calvin an opportunity to communicate nonverbally, just like when you talk to a friend. So let's look at the trauma responsive strategies that teacher Lisa used with the child. One, what we call providing a safe environment. If I feel safe with you, I'll communicate my feelings with you. If I don't feel safe with you, I'm not going to call you on the phone. Also, for a child, as a teacher, when you have a safe, predictable, nurturing, caring classroom, and the child's nervous system feels 12 notches safer, they will play in front of you and share and tell their story nonverbally. So it must have been a safe, predictable environment. The second thing is, if I built a relationship with you proactively, where you trust me and we have a connection, they feel safe and relaxed enough to play and tell their story. Remember, trauma or traumatic toxic stress leaves our nervous system wired on high alert. But what's interesting is when we are in trauma or trigger states, our brain immediately scans for a person, a place, an object, an activity to make us feel safe. If we can't find it, we will hurt others, ourselves, and the things around us in a state of terror. So he must have had a safe relationship with her to play in front of her. And the third thing is the teacher conveying empathy and curiosity with that voice. What is your behavior or your play communicating that you need? Prioritizing listening and not jumping in to fix the child's big feelings. Not trying to make it feel better. Teachers who recognize they don't have to jump in to make a child feel better and fix everything. Instead, saying, not verbally, but just unconsciously through presence, that big scary thing you're going through, I see it. I hear it. Wow. And I'm going to be a safe base for you. To borrow my calm, to lead you to calm. This is life-changing and life-enhancing. Just being present and saying, I see you and the story of what you're going through in your life, and not fixing it. The last one is resources and books. Like the teacher recommended to the parents and had a conversation with the parents about some books that might help. Parents may have asked for it. Dinosaur Divorce. On our website at the Center for Optimal Brain Integration, on our resource tab, we have book resources. So early childhood, elementary, and high school, you can print out the book lists when kids are going through various things. Okay, so this is, again, a simple but a very profound vignette. Let's see if there's any questions from our Zoom participants or here in the room, or comments or story you want to tell. Yes, let's wait for the microphone.
Not really a question, but just a comment on the, I think it was like bullet point 4 that you had, not jumping in to fix a child's big feelings. That's tough. Not just with children, but people in general. I hate to see anyone suffering. And, you know, like the minute somebody struggles to swim, I want to be the one that yanks them out of the pool and solve their problem for them instead of letting them struggle around for a little bit and learn something, or fail and learn from it. And I hate to witness the struggle. So that's something that I know that my first reaction is that, so I kind of need to stand back a little bit and just be, like you said, listen, be supportive, but don't solve their problem. That's hard.
Yeah.
I understand why to do it, but it's hard to do because my natural instinct is save them, pull them out of the water.
First of all, I love you and I love that you have so much empathy and so much drive to be a helper and to that's why we're here on this planet. Most of us in this room have this superpower of helping. And I think as we're thinking about our helper skills, some of the things we can think about are helping ourselves, right? Self-care, self-awareness. Your revelation of your self-awareness that I tend to want to jump in and fix is part of this journey of strengthening our superpowers. You know, Superman has all these superpowers, but what made Superman weak? The kryptonite. What makes helpers weak is either honing their skills so much that they scan for everyone else's needs and they don't meet their own, and then they get burnt out. But also these kinds of little subtle muscles that we need to develop. One of the what you just revealed as a hard muscle for you is actually true for most humans. Most humans don't listen. They jump in to fix or start solving or say, what can I do? And we've lost this ability or never learned the ability of the powerful gift of attunement, just sitting and being present with somebody. And then as they calm, see, as the nervous system calms, what opens for business? What part of the brain? The green cortex. Remember, 90% of the time it shuts down under stress. So for this little guy, after the teacher's attuning, and he's starting to talk about a solution, which is the princess can make my mommy and daddy come back, but I know it's not true. He knows the difference between reality and not, but he's processing his feelings, his hopes. And he will come to the solutions on his own when his cortex opens for business, when we provide the regulatory support to calm somebody. Once they're calm, we can say, let's think of a solution. And you'll learn that in some of these. Was there anything else? Any other questions, comments, or Zoom chats? Nope. You'll get another chance again after vignette 3. So this is a story that was told through play about a community fire. You know all the fires that have happened in California, right? So this is a real story of Mario, who's 6, and his family. They woke up in the middle of the night smelling smoke, and the local emergency warning siren in the town of Paradise was burning down from the fires ravaging through their community. And Mario's parents quickly picked up him and his sister, Sandra, a few valuables, and they started driving. But while they were driving, I know you've heard these horror stories, and I hate telling them, but just the flames were over the freeway, and you know you couldn't get out fast. You're driving 1 mile an hour while there's hundreds of cars on the freeway, and the flames are coming over the car, and Mario's screaming, "Are we going to die? We're going to die!" And the dad stayed really calm, and he started singing. What's the song from Encanto? Bruno? Someone has to know this. Yeah, that's it. We don't talk about Bruno. I forget. Like, I don't have all this memorized, but just, yeah, he started singing that song with Mario. I don't know how it goes because my kids are like 30 now, but just, and started singing the singing, and we're going to be fine. Everything's okay. Even though the dad's heart's racing and the dad's thoughts were probably like, oh, shh, swear word. We are seriously. And so there was a lot of terror for this child. And children who have immature nervous systems, the most natural place for them to discharge their big feelings is through play. So what happened after all of this, and they're at the shelter and their home burns down, he goes back to school. And we all can guess what happens in his play. He is drawing pictures of fires, drawing pictures of flames, drawing pictures of emergency situations. Not only is he drawing pictures, he's acting it out with all the toys and the cars and the fire trucks over and over and over, repeating it over and over and over. What was he communicating? I feel unsafe. I'm scared. I'm worried. And I'm still terrified of what happened to me and my family. And the teacher did a very similar thing, sat near Mario and provided the relational safety and the support to help him express himself through this story. But there's a whole series of things that happen during this play. It doesn't all happen in one sitting, but it's the teacher sitting close by Mario, the closest that Mario can tolerate, and wonder, what's this truck? That's a fire truck. They're going to put out the fire. They're doing this. And just asking curious, calm questions while observing the nervous system to make sure it stays calm. I can't push too far. There was a point during the play where the teacher felt like, because remember when the cortex is open for business, when I feel safe with you, safe in the environment, and you are seeing my story and I feel calm enough, the teacher felt like they could ask a question. Is there anyone that can help this family? Because the play was constantly being in flames. The art was constantly being in flames, danger. So the teacher said, is there anyone that can come and help this family? Right now, if their house is on fire, is there anyone around that could help? Noticing is the nervous system becoming dysregulated. And Mario started to bring in helpers and firefighters to come finally through this play to save the family. And along the way, the teacher's like, who's helping? What are they doing? Where are they going now? So at some point, the play that's expressed and repeated over and over, the trauma, the danger, the story of the trauma and the danger, the story of the trauma and the danger, the teacher realized there was a point in time where she could ask if we could solve this problem by bringing in firefighters. So what happened was Jessie began to comment on what she was observing. You're drawing a fire, the car's driving so close to the fire. There's this concept called just say what you see like you're a camera. Attuned listening is sitting and being present with a child. And if you want to do something at all, just say what you see. I see flames you're drawing around the cars. I see a family driving on the freeway. That's providing a message to the child's inner world. Oh, you're seeing what I'm going through in a non-dangerous way. An adult providing that co-regulated, say what you see, you're overwhelmed, borrow my calm to calm your nervous system, is where she started. She said, Mario, you're with me in the classroom and you're safe now. That was then, this is now. See, there's something I want to tell you about a trauma trigger. When I walked down the stairs on my 50th birthday, I'm 56 now. I'm in the middle of writing my first book on trauma. I walked down the stairs and my husband had all these presents. And my heart started racing and I started having a panic attack and I ran out of the house and ran to the gym. I got out of the car. I called my husband because exercise back then was my regulatory. I got out of the car. I called my husband. I'm like, I don't know what's wrong with me. I feel weird. He's like, this happens to you every birthday. And I realized in that moment that presents represent danger to me. Because my father would give me something really nice and I would feel happy and loved and excited. And he would proceed to ruin my entire birthday, every single birthday, which is why every birthday I dissociate. So I think to myself, this idea of a trauma trigger, you're writing a book, Julie, you shouldn't have a trauma trigger. You don't get rid of your trauma triggers in the trauma healing journey. You build more awareness and strategies you can use when you're in the middle of it. So one of the things that happens is your brain tricks you when it's triggered by something, the visual presence. It sends your nervous system back to think you're back in the trauma. Like a war veteran who's 50 now, who fought in a war when they're 20s. They're walking their white fluffy dog down the street and a car backfires 2 blocks away. And this guy dives under the table, lets go of his dog, starts shaking. And the neighbors are looking out the window with the voice, what's wrong with you? What's happening when you have a trauma trigger is your body has stored past memories inside of you that can, in the present moment, in a non-dangerous situation, get triggered by a smell, a sight, a sound, a touch, a present. Sending your body down the neurosynaptic connectors to the past stored trauma memory to tell you that you are back there. You are back with your dad. And what the teacher was doing was a strategy called help the child remember that they are here in the present moment, not back there. So she just simply said, that was then, and this is now. Your family's safe. I'm here with you. You're safe with me at school. She could see his body relax just a little bit. So let's just kind of summarize some things that were happening for Mario. There was a point when Mario wasn't ready for questions. You can see it by eyes darting, shoulders moving up. The visual, I can't handle, this is too much. I'm not ready. But then there's a point where he signals, I'm ready for some open-ended questions. And eventually Jesse, the teacher, started to ask open-ended questions to seek a solution. Who can come and help? Jesse also introduced Mario to books that would promote resilience and also communicated with Mario's family. I'll talk to you about some of the books that they recommended. Let's look at the trauma responsive strategies. Listening without words, there's our theme that comes up. Attuning to the story, sending a message to the child, I'm the bigger, wiser, stronger, kinder adult, and I will be a safe base for you to take all your distress and borrow my calm to lead you to calm. It's called co-regulation or mirror neurons. How many of you have ever been around a human where you're like, I got to get away from this person, they're causing me anxiety? That's because of mirror neurons. Or how many of you have ever walked into a restaurant and said, I got a bad feeling about this place or even this person? There is something called mirror neurons. When you are in the presence of human beings, you pick up on their energy and it becomes contagious, which is great if you're around somebody positive and uplifting. Somebody even has higher levels of health than you, they'll just lead you to higher levels of health through their mirror neurons. But if you're around toxic people or distressed people, you're going to be easily led to their distress. Unless you're like me, when I grew up as a child, we used to have these sayings, my whole body's a mirror, whatever you say bounces off of me and back onto you. Or sticks and stones will break my bones, but names will never hurt me. We need a mantra to not absorb. So when I'm around someone toxic, I need some kind of invisible fortress like that that comes up that says, I'm not going to allow you to lead me to dysregulation. Now, let's go back to the child. Remembering mirror neurons. Your calm state is the #1 way to lead somebody who's having a trauma trigger back to calm. Let them borrow your calm to calm them. Listen to their story as long as they're safe. Provide the co-regulatory support. And every trauma expert says the #1 way to calm a child is through your voice tone, facial expressions. No words. Voice tone and facial expressions. Because when we were born on the planet for the first time, we don't understand language and we don't have any way to comfort a baby other than what? Rocking, humming. And when I hold my grandbaby, I don't go, stop crying or I'm going to give you something to cry about. I go like this, it's okay, mamacita, babies. We change our tone because with a higher pitched tone, the baby or dogs or humans. So your tone of voice. And another secret tip for you is when you extend the ends of your words, you will calm another person more. In other words, slow the prosody of your speech a little bit, not to look weird. You don't want to be like, hello. We don't want to do weird things. We just want to be like, something happened. What happened? See how I'm extending a few of my words? These are the kinds of co-regulatory strategies we can use when we're in the presence of another person. So Mario began to heal through the finding solutions, having power and control over the fire that made him feel out of control. One of the books that was recommended was this book that's free and downloadable called Once I Was Very, Very Scared by Chandra Ghosh Ippen. ChandраGhoshIppen. You'll go to Google this, Once I Was Very, Very Scared, and you'll find it on Amazon. But it's in multiple languages on their website, free and downloadable. It's a story of 4 animals. Each of the animals have been through something scary, and every child's going to go through something scary, even if it's scared of monsters at night. And each of the animals experiences intense feelings and sensations from the scary thing. Sensations would be like a stomach ache or a headache. Most trauma impacted children experience intense physical sensations because that's where the trauma memories are stored in the hind survival brain, not necessarily feelings. So what happens is they experience intense sensations and feelings for all humans who are in distress. But if you have a trauma trigger, you mostly experience sensations because the hind survival brain was the only part of your brain awake when you were experiencing trauma. And that's the part of your brain that gives you sensations. So when you get a trauma trigger, you have intense sensations to fight, flight, or freeze. You lose ability to have access to feelings and thoughts. That's why we have to stop talking to people when they're in the middle of distress, because they cannot access words, they cannot access language. And if it's a real trauma trigger, it's literally, I become voiceless. Let's pause for a moment to see if you have questions. Maybe I didn't give that resource enough. Anything at all before we move on to the next one. Someone has a question in the chat, plus let's see if anyone in the room does. We see your message in the chat. Do you want me to read it? I can see it.
Yeah, it says, I have a close friend who, after listening to her, being around her, my mind is exhausted, drained. I have learned to listen and not add to her story because I know just needs to vent. She just needs to vent. She had lots of trauma as a child, teenager, and young adult.
Wow. That was a really powerful comment. It is absolutely 100% true that to listen and attune to another human being who's in distress, you are letting them borrow your calm to calm their nervous system. That's a lot. That's more work than running a marathon. I made that data up. I don't even know if it's real. I just said it literally out of nowhere, but it could be. Being a helper is draining. Being a giver is draining. Regulating 20 nervous systems in a classroom is draining. A whole nother training I do is strengthening adult self-awareness and self-care. Because just like my analogy of being a superhero, if you're not aware, and by the way, Adrian on Zoom, thank you for your comment. You publicly posted it, so I'm saying your name, but I just love you. And I really want to thank you for that comment. And let me tell you why I love it so much. Because when we have self-awareness, we can also take care of ourselves. I'll never forget in high school, I had a friend whose mother had cancer and she died. And she called me every day, every night and talked just like your friend did for hours about this. I ended up getting pneumonia. Literally the pneumonia, I think, was to protect myself. But I was too young to be able to set limits and say, no, of course I want to be there for my friend, but at the expense of myself. This is really hard. And there are some friends that I have who drain the soul out of me. What I mean by that is I have one friend who literally will be like, oh, you want to go walking? But when we go walking, she talks about herself nonstop and never asks me about me, which is fine. I still love her. But I can only make an appointment to go with her walking if I feel restored. And I suggest we go walking. I'm sorry, I said the story wrong. I suggest we go walking so at least I can burn calories while we're walking. So I'm getting something out of it, right? Like you have to take care of yourself. You have to get a PhD in yourself and know, what do I need? And when am I triggered? And when am I not able to sit with this child and be attuned? Because I'm not in a good space right now. So this word attunement is exhausting, but it's this visceral feeling of feeling safe with another human. Social support is not the same as being in the presence of another. I have run into very few human beings who are good at this skill of attunement. Most of us, check yourself when you're with another person. While the person is talking, are you thinking about what you want to say next? Are you thinking about what you're going to have for dinner? Are you looking at your phone? It's even worse with the phones now, but this critical issue of truly being heard is so powerful and healing. I have a brother who lives in Texas. He's a teacher. He's a high school teacher in Texas. And he's like, he goes, Julie, you're such a good listener. He goes, I just realized that I don't think I've ever met a human that's ever listened. Like, this is the greatest gift you can give when you are in the presence of another human. And this is the gift that we want to give these children when they are playing. Let's look at this vignette number 4. I'm just going to sit nearby. Lindsay, who's a preschool teacher, shares about Katie, a young 4-year-old in her classroom who ran under the table and hide and started to shake and lose her ability to talk. Now, do you need to know if it's a trauma history to help a child? Are there a separate set of strategies for trauma and a separate set of strategies for social emotional? You do not need to know. When a child is in distress, whether it's a typical challenging behavior where the emotional buttons were pushed or they had a trauma trigger, your job is to help their nervous system feel safe. And what people don't know is that they don't need to know a whole set of trauma responsive strategies. All trauma curriculum is about pathways to help nervous systems feel regulated and safe. And with repetition over time, we can rewire the body to feel calmer and more in the optimal zone of arousal and regulation. So she didn't need to know why either. Katie was in, what happened? Right? That's why I don't like the voice, what's wrong with you? Because then we punish, blame, shame, ignore. Just ignore Katie. She's trying to get attention. That's what we say in this country a lot. Ignore them. They're trying to get attention. The second thing that we need to remember is that we don't need to know why. We just need to do whatever it will take to help Katie feel safe. With that voice, what happened to you? We're asking questions, but you lose access to the cortex in your verbal words when you're in distress. So I love the voice. What is your behavior communicating you need to feel safe right now? That third voice, that trauma responsive voice. So let's talk about this situation. So Katie goes under the table. The teacher has a personality that just wants to, kind of a little bit like you, but like wants to run under the table and hug the child and hold them. And she learned very quickly that dysregulated her even more. So the teacher began to learn, I can only be this far from the child when she goes under that table. She tolerates me being this far and I can sit by her. In the beginning, the teacher would just sit by her and say, I'm here. You're safe with me. There's nothing dangerous. Or she'd sit in silence first, which is weird for all of us. And then slowly would say these words if her nervous system can tolerate it. And over time, she would say, can I just put my hand inside under the table? Asking permission. Waiting for the child to just grab her hand. When she's ready, because we want to give kids what? Agency and control. If it's a trauma trigger, all the events made me feel a complete, utter loss of control, and I had no power. And when we recreate the conditions that make children feel powerless by running up and hugging them or diving under the table with them, that's the safe place that they went, or starting to ask a lot of questions, we're going to dysregulate the nervous system even more. When Katie was ready, she grabbed her hand. This is how trauma healing happens, slowly over time. So calmness is contagious and stress is contagious. Most of the time when children have dysregulated behaviors, teachers become dysregulated. They stop at the voice, what's wrong with you? And children, especially trauma-impacted children, can see it in their face. And what is the top way to communicate safety? Voice tone and facial expressions. I like to give personal examples. I had to fly, my husband and I were flying on our way to Thailand, and we had to have a layover in Japan. So we land in Japan after 8 hours, and there's some kind of anomaly ice storm that doesn't allow the plane to move up to the, what do you call it, to get everybody off the plane? The gate. Yeah, the gate. The gate. And we are sitting on the tarmac for a total of 7.5 hours after an 8-hour flight. Now, I have claustrophobia because part of my trauma history is when my father would come into these violent rages, I would feel trapped. So anything that makes me feel trapped, like if I was in this training, I'd be by a door, right? So anything that makes me feel trapped makes me feel out of control. But I would look around the plane and I would see everybody looked so calm. And that's what saved my life. The children are doing the same with teachers. That's why teachers need self-awareness and not moving to that plate that you can feel dysregulated inside. You can have a buzzing bee of energy. But awareness of it And then recognizing my tone in my face will help lead you to calm. Ferocity of voice and nonverbal language. Also individualizing strategies. There's not a one size fits all. Being a human and being a helper and working with children and students is hard because we have to read the individual nervous system and decide what strategy is going to help that student feel safe. And then something doesn't work, and we have to try something else. And the other thing we have to remember is that healing trauma does not happen from one strategy. People come to my trauma trainings all over the country, and they come back and say, well, Julie, I tried the one strategy of having a safe place in the corner of the room or a visual schedule, and it didn't work. And we have to remember that it's significant doses and repetition over time of a safe adult and a safe environment that will help a child begin to rewire their nervous system, giving choice and control in a situation. When you're ready, you'll let me know, or I'll ask your permission to move closer. And always this concept of we have to calm the hindbrain before we do cortex strategies. Cortex strategies are all the things you learn in a social emotional training. Use your voice is what we learn in social emotional curriculum. But you cannot use your voice when you don't have access to your cortex. And you certainly can't use it if you're in the middle of a trauma trigger, because trauma memories are stored only in the hindbrain, which is the nonverbal part of your brain. So when you're in the middle of a trauma trigger, you can't use your words. So our goal is to calm the downstairs brain so the cortex opens and more words will be accessible. Let's pause there and see if anybody has any comments, questions, stories they want to tell. We have time.
Hey, how's it going?
Good.
Yeah. A situation that has happened to me a few times is like when working with a child that won't stop. They're moving everywhere and they just will not come down. And then they begin to get destructive
Okay.
and start hitting and punching other students and won't listen.
Okay.
And it's just like, what do you do in a situation
Whew.
where they're just there? They will not hear a voice.
Yes. Okay, this is a great example. So I would guess that this is a child that lives in a very distressed nervous system. And I have no idea whether it comes from ADHD or anxiety or trauma. I couldn't even begin to guess unless I spent a long time with you or the student. But already we know that the child is communicating something, that they can't sit still. They feel really anxious in their body. So in a lot of our trauma trainings that we do, this is a longer answer. We need to have classrooms and environments that are proactively putting in many pathways to regulate nervous systems. Otherwise, we have to rely on just the teacher's voice to say, sit down, stop doing that. And we resort to correcting and directing. And then we resort to classrooms that do sticker charts and reward charts, which is not going to work with people with trauma histories. So we have to begin to move classrooms by learning more trauma responsive strategies, which we're not going to learn all of here today. But I can always guide you if you want to email me to places you can go get these trainings. But we need a lot of things in place. For example, I always say we need a safe place in the classroom carved out when a student's nervous system is dysregulated where they can go to re-regulate. We do need things like fidget toys on tables for students to be able, or even chairs or balls to sit on to constantly move. We need to teach students how to recognize when their body's in distress and how to find one of these pathways. We need to also be able to teach sensory literacy and body awareness. See, a lot of these students are so shut down from their own body, they aren't aware when they're triggered. So proactively teaching sensory literacy, body awareness, and emotional literacy when they're calm, teaching them how to recognize the size of their emotions. And then we see in schools, we do earthquake drills and fire drills and active shooter drills. But we never do what to do in an emotional emergency. So even for all of these kids that I'm talking about, in any classroom, whether it's early childhood or older, We have to proactively teach students how to recognize the sensations and feelings in their body, how to recognize the size of them, and when my temperature is rising up to the medium trigger level so I can catch things early. And then we need to start to teach them all these resiliency skills, like getting a PhD in yourself. What pathways, people, places, objects, activities outside of school and in school can I use when I'm dysregulated so I don't hurt others, myself, or the things around me? Now, I've written an award-winning children's book called Understanding My Brain, Becoming Humane. It's in English and Spanish. One version is 4 to 8, another is 5 to 10. Teaches the kids through the lens of 4 animals about the different parts of their brain. It's for all kids, not just trauma-impacted kids. And what happens when we get hijacked by the downstairs brain? It teaches them about sensory literacy, emotional literacy, size of emotions. And Ozzy the Owl teaches how to build this toolkit of strategies to help me feel safe in the moment. We actually need to proactively be doing that with all of our students. I think the world has to move away from thinking I became a teacher just for academics. Instead, what I am is a whole student teacher. I'm here to teach academics, but I recognize that no one can listen and learn or focus with their cortex not engaged. So I need to have strategies around the classroom. Oh, I thought I'd go till 12:15. Oh, 12. Thank you for the warning because my brain said 12:15. We have to really be aware of that. We need to proactively be promoting a lot of these skills and pathways in the classroom. That's a short answer. Any other questions? Grandma can give them a hug. Teacher Karen Galicia, a social emotional specialist working in a Head Start program, explains that when children play with toys, early educators can seize opportunities to talk about their feelings and how they're doing emotionally in the moment. Preeta, who's a 4-year-old in Karen's classroom, experienced the death of her father. She shares the story of Preeta, who began to express her feelings through play. When Preeta played with the doll, she would say, "The doll died. He's dead." Preeta said, "Oh no, he's dead." Teacher Karen would say, "Who's dead?" "It's the dad, he's dead." This is scary. I don't know that I want to be in this situation, right? With a child reenacting this right in front of me through their play. Teacher Karen said, "What does dead mean, Preeta?" And then Preeta says, "It means you don't come back, you can't eat anymore, and you won't live in your home with your kids, you're in heaven." Keep in mind, she used the word heaven, right? We don't want to use these words with kids if we don't know what their beliefs are, but she used it. How does this doll feel? Pointing to the adult doll who's not dead. I should just remember we're reading the nervous system of children. Are they getting more dysregulated or more calm as we begin to do these questions? Pull back if they're not regulated. Preeta says she cries a lot and is sad. She must be talking about her mother, right? Or grandmother. Teacher Karen, she's sad because this doll is in heaven and won't live any longer? She's not telling her, she's asking. Preeta shakes her head, yes. Teacher Karen, how does this doll feel? Pointing to the young child doll. Preeta says, sad. Teacher Karen, it's okay for dolls to feel sad. When we love someone and they die, it can feel very sad. When the dolls talk about how they feel, it can help them when they feel big feelings of sadness. What are some things the dolls can do to feel safe and help when they feel sad? Preeta says, ask for a hug. Teacher Karen, yes, a hug can help. Is there someone who can help the dolls who feel sad by giving them a hug? This doll over here is the grandma. She can come and give them a hug. Teacher Karen, that sounds like a great idea. Let's have grandma come in and give them a hug. This doesn't all happen in one sitting, right? It happens over time as we read the nervous system, but over time, what's happening for the student? She's processing her grief, her sadness, and slowly finding, as the cortex opens, some things she can do to help the baby dolls, but who's it really helping? Her. I'm going to go to, since we only have a little bit of time, I'm going to start to slowly move towards the end. I'll just quickly tell you this story. This is a great story of children who were acting out superheroes on the classroom, right? And sometimes they would have guns and they would have different things that they would act out on the classroom. And what happened was the kids started to develop behavior when they were mad about something. They would bring out their superhero and they get a little too aggressive being the superhero, right? The teachers recognized it and decided to build on their interest by creating a cape with an S on the back. I'm shortening this story for you, but creating a cape with an S on the back. And the S stands for superhero, but started to teach the kids that these superhero capes have two sides. A side where we can feel sad or big emotions, and a side where we can also have strength to deal with these situations. So it was really interesting how we can take play and turn it into a powerful situation and help kids see the side of themselves that can be strength and help them cope in ways that won't hurt others, themselves, or the things around us, or a side of them that can hurt others when our emotions get really big. And so by wearing this cape, they could also create this play, like catching kids when they were using the side of themselves that helped them self-regulate, to help them calm their bodies, right? I don't know if we can hear this video or not, but this is a child who's playing and communicating her distress. Her community had been through a lot of the fires, and I want to see if we can hear it.
Better get that kid out. This family on the kid.
Do you need help getting that kid safe or you got it?
Got it.
Oh, good.
Lots of kids that still left in the home. There you go. This family. The kids, and these were some dogs.
And they're all on their way to Safe Town?
She says they're all on their way to Safe Town.
That hotel room looks really sturdy.
Yeah, it is. It is really clean.
It's really clean.
Yeah.
And strong, it looks like.
Yeah. Anybody wanted there
Good idea.
with the family. And even this family, which is only a curry and a baby. There's only a curry and a baby.
Just the corner baby, so it's like a mommy and a baby. Yeah, they should go be safe too.
Yes. That's the eyeball family.
Oh, the eyeball family. Get in that hotel room, eyeball family.
In the hotel room. Where the left to go. Oh, and there's a walking with.
Oh, don't leave behind any kids. There you go.
Now everyone is safe.
Everyone's safe. Oh, what a relief.
Do you want to see them?
I do. What's going on?
And now the whole house is messed up, but the fire is gone.
Oh, the fire's gone. Oh, phew. So now what happens?
But the whole town is messed up.
The whole town looks really messed up. What are they gonna do?
And there's still one fire left.
There is. Oh, wow.
And now every single house.
So I'm going to stop it there. What I want to share with you is that clearly we have a raffle that you can look at in just a moment, but just how powerful it is to just be attuned and listen and narrate what you see. And the little girl is acting it out. She says everyone's safe. Then there's a fire. The whole town's messed up. There's one more fire that needs to be put out. And she's processing the feelings of what she's experienced in her community. And this play is such an important way, powerful way for healing. One of the raffle prizes I do is a $25 Amazon gift card. Then you can buy any of these resources you want. You can buy our book if you want. And what I'll do tomorrow is I'll put all your names in a spinner wheel. The way that you enter is just scan this code, or you can go to our website if you're like, what's a scan? I don't know what a scan is. That's too stressful. Go to our website on our contact page. Or if you scroll to the bottom of the homepage, you can put your email in. It'll pop up in my email, your email, and then I put your name in a spinner wheel, and tomorrow I pick one name, and then I'll email you if you won, and we'll email you a $25 Amazon gift card. To thank you for being here today. Thank you for being on this journey with me about being a light for healing children in any different way. If you want to stay in contact with me, please do. In the PowerPoint that I think you'll be provided, you'll see all the different ways that you can stay in contact with me, all the different early childhood books that we've written. And I'll leave the scan code up and I'll be up here, but it's 12. We did it. We're on time. Yay. Thank you so much, everybody. I'll stay up here if anybody has any questions.